Greetings, welcome to another edition of Counterpunch, the show that chronicles the unfolding world communist revolution that we must push back. Please like the show, share the show, and subscribe to EpokhTV. 2021, Mark Levin, very good commentator, released a book called American Marxism. And it was a bestseller, and it deserved to be. It's a very good book, but it has one major flaw. Levin's main argument is that the Marxist revolution we're experiencing right now in America is a domestic revolution. It is not driven by the Communist Party of the Soviet Union as it was in the past. This is done by American communists to American people. Now, I got to say, Mr. Levin, that's incorrect. That is one flaw of your book, and it's a very serious thing because if Americans see this as an American-only revolution, they will fail to take account of who is really driving this, and the solutions will not be up to the task. The unfolding US revolution is and always has been influenced by foreign powers. And I want to start with a few examples, to give a few examples of the many I could cite about how these foreign powers have been and still are influencing this country. And I want to start with an older example. I have in my possession a letter from April 1975. It was written by Jorge Terrazas Acevedo, a professor of Chicano studies at the University of California. And Acevedo addresses several prominent Chicano activists. Chicano was the favored word of the Marxists at that time. They included California Communist Party member and leader of the illegal immigration movement, Bert Corona, Arizona Communist Party member Lorenzo Torres, also very heavily involved in the illegal immigration movement, United Farm Workers leader Cesar Chavez, Marxist Dolores Huerta, who got the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Barack Obama, Colorado activist Corky Gonzalez, New Mexico land rights access Reyes Tijerena, and Texas socialist Jose Angel Gutierrez. Now, these were all very prominent activists of the time, all very, very influential in one way or another. And in the letter passed on an invitation from the Soviet consulate in San Francisco to these activists, asking them to recruit, if they could, men and women, young men and women, to go to Moscow and train at the Patrice Lumumba School, the school for Third World Revolutionaries, run by the KGB and the Soviet Communist Party. Now, the Soviets assure the correspondents in this letter they seek to support the Chicano self-determination movement. Now, this movement has grown. It's now part of the La Raza, the Mecha consciousness. It's all about splitting the southern states of the United States away from America and returning them to Mexico. They call it Aztlan. So this is a big movement, and the Soviets were backing it, openly backing it. Now, the black community has also been targeted for similar communist separatist plans. In the 1920s, the Communist Party USA, under the direct direction of Joseph Stalin, was advocating for a black socialist republic in the US Southeast. Florida and Tennessee and Georgia and South Carolina were all to be joined together in a black socialist republic, splitting away from the United States. In the 1970s, the radical Black Panther Party, which also had Communist Party members in its ranks, was deeply oriented towards Communist China. They were a Maoist organization, and they sent delegations to China. They looked up to China for leadership. Now, today's Black Lives Matter is the latest iteration in the communist program to split America. Black Lives Matter founders Alicia Garza and Opal Tometi both have ties to a New York-based nonprofit called the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung. The RLS trains American activists in socialist technologies and socialist techniques and gives them guidance.
RLS NYC is part of the international network of the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation. In New York City, our main tasks are, number one, working on issues having to do with the United Nations, and number two, working with United States and Canadian progressives, supporting their work and building bridges between the left on both sides of the Atlantic. We want to focus on political activism and what we can do to contribute to rebuilding the left, here in the United States, but also in Canada, as well as in Germany and internationally.
The RSL is affiliated to the German Rosa Luxemburg Foundation, which is completely funded by the German taxpayer, both the American and German branches, and the Chinese, Russian, and African branches. It's run by a German political party called Die Linke. Die Linke used to be called the East German Communist Party. So you have former East German communists training American activists funded by German taxpayers right now. Die Linke is also part of the Party of the European Left, an alliance of more than 20 communist and socialist parties in the European Parliament, very deeply connected to the European Communist movement. Here is Black Lives Matter movement founder Alicia Garza as part of an American delegation hosted by the Communist Party of Vietnam in 2017. Here is BLM founder Patrisse Cullors mixing with Palestinian radicals back in 2015.
We came here to Palestine to stand in love and revolutionary struggle with our brothers and sisters. We come to a land that has been stolen by greed and destroyed by hate. We come here and we learn laws that have been co-signed in ink but written in the blood of the innocent. And we stand next to people who continue to courageously struggle and resist the occupation. People continue to dream and fight for freedom. From Ferguson to Palestine, the struggle for freedom continues.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
At the center of this picture is US Delegate Ahmad Abusniad, a Black Lives Matter supporter who is the son of a former senior advisor to Yasser Arafat, the head of the terrorist communist pro-Soviet Palestine Liberation Organization. But BLM is closest of all to the Communist Party of China.
BLM leaders are closely tied to the Chinese Communist Party. The main connection is through Asians for Black Lives, which is controlled by the San Francisco-based Chinese Progressive Association, or CPA.
I've been honored and humbled to throw down with folks over the last 7 to 8 months in the name of Black Lives Matter. And I've been really humbled by our co-conspirators, Asians for Black Lives.
The CPA is the Communist Party of China's main West Coast support group. Pam Ta Lee is an Asian for Black Lives member and a CPA leader.
I'm the chairperson and a founder of the Chinese Progressive Association. That our roots start back in the 1930s, who were our mentors, and they came out of around the Depression, and they were socialists, they were communists.
Alex Tom is a founder of Asians for Black Lives and a former chief executive officer of the CPA.
There is a part of the left that has always been really curious and lifting up the role of China. So that is like the Chinese Progressive Association was one of the first organizations to even lift up the revolution in Chinatown, right? Our history basically is founded on people's friendship in China.
In 2013, Alex Tom led a delegation of American radicals to communist China.
We started to be able to have access to coming into China. So we built relationships with people in the party, activists underground, and also NGOs.
In 2016, Alex Tom and CPA official Lucia Lin produced a 300-page revolutionary manual for Asians for Black Lives and BLM activists. Alex Tom has known BLM co-founder Alicia Garza since their student activist days at UC San Diego in the late 1990s.
Actually, I think it was my friend Alicia Garza.
Alex Tom helped Garza and fellow BLM founder Patrisse Cullors form ties with the Southeast Asian Freedom Network, a coalition of Laotian, Cambodian, and Vietnamese radicals. Alex Tom, Alicia Garza, Lucia Lin, and Pam Ta Lee are all members of Left Roots, a front for the pro-communist China organization Liberation Road. In 2014, after traveling to communist China with Alex Tom, Lucia Lin visited Ferguson, Missouri, with her BLM comrade, Alicia Garza. Lin and Garza met with Liberation Road communist Jamala Rogers' Organization for Black Struggle, the Liberation Road front group that organized the Ferguson riots. CPA funds Alicia Garza's far-left voter mobilization organization, Black Futures Lab.
China has had a very important role in funding left experiments.
Alex Tom is also very close to Chinese communist officials in San Francisco.
And we have a relationship with the Chinese embassy. Like, we actually have I've had to have various conversations with them about our positioning.
These CCP connections are ongoing. America's main Marxist-Leninist organization, Communist Party USA, is also completely in bed with the Communist Party of China. The Communist Party USA sends regular delegations to China. They praise China. They take China's side in arguments. They praise China's COVID policy, their international policies, etc. The CCP has members living in China, in Beijing. Here's one of them, a Massachusetts activist named Dylan Walker.
I'm a member of the CPUSA, the Communist Party USA, and I joined when I was 18 years old. So right after my 18th birthday, I submitted my application to join our party and was admitted shortly afterwards. So I've been a party member for about 4 years now. I really grew to like and support this kind of idea and this kind of society. 4 years later, still doing what I can to help bring about change and, work hard for our country to make our country a better place for everybody.
Watch him here praising Xi Jinping's dreams for a socialist China. The Communist Party USA has close relationships with many US Congress members, including Armed Services Committee members Joe Courtney of Connecticut and Mark Vasey of Texas. Yet if China and the US ever get into a shooting war, and we could see that happen this year, there is no doubt on which side the Communist Party USA will stand. I quote here from a 2010 Communist Party USA memo. The United States government has been committing direct acts of provocation against China's economy and other aspects of its society, including its military. If these confrontations are allowed to become full-blown, it will put the current US military ventures in Iraq, Afghanistan, and elsewhere in the shade. And it will demand from all of us, the American communists, new energies to struggle on yet another, perhaps the biggest, domestic front against US imperialism. In other words, they will fight on American soil for communist China. Now, the United States' largest communist organization, called Democratic Socialists of America, they like to call themselves socialists, but they are full-blown communists. They are Marxist, they are Leninist, they are revolutionaries. DSA also has extensive ties to foreign communists and works closely with foreign communists. DSA works very closely with the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung out of New York. It has DSA members on the RLS's staff. RLS trains many members of the Bernie Sanders movement who were largely DSA comrades. DSA also has deep ties to Die Linke and the other communist parties affiliated to the Party of the European Left. DSA has sent several delegations to Europe to meet with Spanish and Greek, Italian, French, and German communists. They do it on a regular basis. They are part of the movement. But the most concerning is DSA's recent application, which I believe has been approved, to join the Sao Paulo Forum. Now, the Sao Paulo Forum, obviously named after the Brazilian city of Sao Paulo, is an alliance of over 100 Latin American communist, socialist, and even armed guerrilla groups that have joined together in an alliance to advance socialism in Latin America, to advance what they call the pink tide. The forum was established in 1990 by Cuban dictator Fidel Castro and Marxist Brazilian union leader Lula da Silva, who later became president of Brazil, to, quote, win for communism in Latin America what has been lost in Eastern Europe. In other words, Romania, Czechoslovakia, Poland, they were no longer communist. Europe had suffered big losses to the communist movement. We have to make them up in Latin America. And the Sao Paulo Forum has aided or abetted or is responsible for a wave of communist and socialist victories all over Latin America and the Caribbean. They call it the pink tide that has swept Latin America, receded a bit, and now is coming back with a vengeance. They are the reason the Sao Paulo Forum aided communist or socialist victories in Venezuela, in Chile, Argentina, Peru, Ecuador, El Salvador, Honduras, and Nicaragua. I would say also Mexico. Mexico's president, AMLO, is a former member of the Mexican Communist Party and an avid supporter of the Sao Paulo Forum and a deep, deep enemy of the United States of America. We need to recognize that fact. And it's because Mr. Obrador is no longer afraid of President Trump that he is fully cooperating with the caravans of migrants coming up through Honduras and Mexico, through Latin America, to basically invade and destroy the United States of America. This is part of the Sao Paulo Forum's war on the United States. We are the number one enemy right now. So DSA is now part of the Sao Paulo Alliance. Democratic Socialists of America has state legislators in many states across this country. It controls most of the union movement of this country. It has infiltrated churches. It has infiltrated universities, social movements. It cooperates with Black Lives Matter. It cooperates with the Communist Party USA and many other radical groups in this country. It has almost 100,000 members, the most powerful communist organization in the country right now. It has 4 current members of Congress, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, Jamal Bowman, also of New York, Cori Bush of Missouri, and Rashida Tlaib of Michigan. It has several close allies in Congress and the Senate as well. These include Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts, Jan Schakowsky of Chicago, who used to be a full-fledged DSA member, and Senator Liz Warren of Massachusetts, who did stand for president in 2020. These people are now affiliated with a revolutionary Latin American-based organization, a communist alliance founded by Fidel Castro. In May this year, Cori Bush and Ilhan Omar were part of a congressional delegation to Honduras to meet with that country's leftist president, Xiomara Castro, and it was all about discussing the immigration that's coming through Latin America, all about discussing how America's to blame for this surge of immigration because of the horrible things America's done to Latin America. Now, Xiomara Castro is a member of the Sao Paulo Forum. She is a full-on ally of the communist movement. The interpreter for this delegation was a young activist named Matt Ginsburg Jekyll. He's a Chicago man and he's a member of Left Roots. This is the revolutionary Marxist organization that has deep ties to both the Communist Party of China and Black Lives Matter. So these few examples, I think, will confirm the fact that American revolutionaries are deeply tied to foreign communist movements. They're tied to the Communist Party of China. They're tied to the Communist Party of Russia and the Putin regime. They're tied to North Korea. They're tied to the Communist Party of the Philippines. They're tied to Iran. They're tied to Venezuela, Honduras, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba, to South Africa, and many other members of the world communist movement. This is the American Revolution. It's not made in America. It is guided by foreign powers, because these foreign powers understand that the only real impediment left to a world communist regime is a free, independent, constitutional America. So it makes sense that the world communist movement would have its people in the United States would be working with domestic communist parties to create as much havoc and economic devastation as possible. This is a problem with the book American Marxism. It deals with the problem in America pretty well. It does a good job, but it fails to recognize that there is still an international communist movement guided by China, guided by Russia, North Korea, Venezuela, even Iran, and America is still the number one target. Most of the communist movements in this country are working with foreign powers. Though most of them are taking full direction from foreign powers. You know, I used to, when I was in New Zealand, I had a friend who infiltrated the New Zealand Communist Party for our security services. And that time, the New Zealand Communist Party, the Socialist Unity Party, was completely subservient to Moscow. My friend John van der Ven would say, you cannot believe the lengths New Zealand communists would go to please their Soviet masters. Their whole existence was about pleasing their Soviet masters. Well, that's the Communist Party USA today with China. That is Democratic Socialists of America with the Sao Paulo Forum. They are working against their own country in the interest of our enemies. There's a word for that. There's a penalty for that. It is actually an offense. I hope you'll more understand that what's happening in America is not driven so much by America, it's driven by foreign powers to take America down. Yes, there are collaborators in our government. Yes, there are collaborators in our communist parties, but it's primarily driven from overseas. So please share the show, like the show, subscribe, and encourage your friends to subscribe to epochtv. Keep watching for the next episodes of Counterpunch. God bless America, and God bless everybody who loves freedom. Thank you very much.